Hello everybody, it's been a little bit. Can't say it's been the easiest month for me, but never mind that. I'm back and wanted to go over what I would like to call a change in philosophy. Essentially, today I picked up the Smith & Wesson 642. It's a 5-shot airlight revolver with a laser crimson trace grip. Zooming in, you can see here, this is an older one when it was still made in Springfield, Massachusetts. It's a 38 special plus P airlight for the camera. We're unloaded. Same with this Glock 43X. It's unloaded. Empty mag. Anyway, so to speak, going back to what I said before, I've had a change in philosophy. Originally, and it's not out of the picture completely, I would carry this 43. It's got a 15 round factory Glock magazine. This is the Gen 1 on a grit grips frame with the night sights, 9mm. And there's some debate on whether or not this would be considered a compact pistol. They call it its own realm of pistols, like a mid-compact. And the 462, a very old design, a J-frame, considered one of the best all-around everyday carries. Now, why wouldn't I want to carry the 43X with 15 rounds of 9mm over a 5-shot revolver J-frame, an old design with a double action only trigger, no hammer, well, internal hammer, and unfortunately the Hillary hole, as it's called, over the modern day 43X? Well, on its own, this pistol weighs around, or this revolver rather, weighs around 14 ounces. Fully loaded, it still comes in under a pound. The 43X, I don't quite know the weight. However, with a loaded 15 round magazine of 9mm, I believe it comes in over a pound. Now, it's a slimline pistol, and I've got a nice little in the waist holster for it. You would think that the 43X would be the better option of the two. However, in my own opinion, I don't find there ever to be a situation when you're out in public where I'm going to need 30 rounds. Let's say I got 2 magazines. The other one, the loaded magazine, is well away from the equation here. The point being, from the pocket, this can be shot through a coat pocket. The hammer is not going to bind up on anything, and the shells remain within the cylinder. Now, 5 shots is not a whole lot, And there's other revolvers out there with 6 shots or even more, 7 or 8. Why would I pick it over the 43X? Well, I'll tell you why. Because now we're in summer months, it's a much lighter and easier to carry weapon, whereas this has to go in your waistband. I wouldn't consider this a pocket carry gun, as it has no external safety and it has only a 4-pound trigger, while this has a 10 to 12-pound trigger. Even at that weight, the double action is not so bad. And if you train with it, you really don't notice. With the 43X, when you're in a pocket and you shoot from the pocket, you have this ejection port which is going to bind up into your coat. That will not happen. Your coat's going to get chewed up from the side gas coming out from the edge of the barrel or the edge of the cylinder. However, you're not going to get any binding. The other point that I want to make here, the change in my philosophy, is that of the two, this is a little bit less menacing. Now, the Second Amendment doesn't have anything to do with being menacing. And overall, I don't agree with the term or the idea. But when it comes to everyday carry, the whole idea of a revolver, especially a double action hammerless or a non-exposed hammer, is that you're not looking to get into an altercation. You're looking to get out of a situation. Whereas with the 43X, while it's a great carry option, along with the Bodyguard 2.0 that I traded in, leaving a gap, which made me get this gun here. If you're getting into a big shootout, you're already screwed. It's not going to really benefit you in a court of law, sitting there, oh, I dumped 15 rounds. The whole idea of self-defense is that you're avoiding the whole skirmish by shock and awe and evasion. Now, don't get me wrong, I'll still be carrying the 43X when I'm in a sketchy area. But for around where I live, which is not really that much of a high threat, high crime area, running and doing errands and going around town, I'd rather have something than nothing. And the ease of carrying this gun, I wouldn't say it would be much easier to carry this gun, but there's a lot more options. And when it comes to putting this in my pocket, I'm not really thinking about it so much as I am this guy, where one little mistake, putting your finger on that trigger, can go through your leg. This one here, you have a little bit more grace, and you're a little bit more dedicated to knowing that the situation is prompting you to fire your weapon. You have a 12-pound trigger pull, but you can keep it in a coat, and with the weight, you don't really consider it as much as the 43X, where it's in your waistband, you're sitting down, it's pushing into your abdomen. This one here, sitting in your pocket, and of course with the laser, which I wouldn't rely on. I would look down the sights, even though they're minimal to non-existent. You know that any engagement that you get into, you're just doing it so you can get out of dodge. This here is more of a skirmish weapon. You're having a large shootout, and you know that you're not going to be outgunned. If you live in a decent area, I think that the 642 airweight or any kind of double action, even a single action revolver, is the ideal choice, especially if you throw it in a fanny pack or your pocket. You go running, local coyote or something comes out, you'll definitely catch its attention with a plus P round, and it allows you to move on about your life. You're not really worrying that you left your gun in the car. You have to wear a pair of shorts or pants that this has to fit into. You throw this in a pocket and you're all set. Many people I've encountered, and from my research online, they've carried this gun for 30 plus years. So much so, I've even read an account that they had an imprint of this gun permanently in their leather jacket. I'll end the video on a note that I'll make of a personal experience. When I went to Maine a couple weeks ago, I recently had traded for a Glock 30S. It was two 10-round magazines of 45 Hydroshock, and I kept it in a safe, kept it in my trunk, and I drove through the beautiful state of Massachusetts. You'll understand the reason for my pause. Well, anyway, I can tell you that I was white knuckling it through Massachusetts with that gun, and I brought it just in case of bear. Now, I wouldn't rely my life on a 38 plus P for a bear. However, there were a couple rest stops where there was a little bit of a sketchy situation, and with everything in the media now about Glocks and any pistol that's similar to a Glock, unfortunately there's a stigma around them that you're up to no good. Universally, I would have probably felt better with this revolver, especially if you can get one of the models that's chambered in 357 Magnum. Now, even that is a little bit underpowered for a bear. However, if I were to be pulled over and had this in my safe in the trunk, I would feel less apt that I was going to be in some kind of major legal trouble as if I were to be with a Glock. And I'm not saying this from a liberal standpoint. I'm saying this from a conservative standpoint where I just want to be left alone. And unfortunately, unfortunately, the stigma around Glocks right now, especially with Connecticut and Massachusetts both having an active Glock ban, it points even further towards an old school revolver as a more reasonable choice for an all-around carry that I wouldn't be really as nervous. I'd still be nervous, but not as nervous going through some of these Second Amendment unfriendly states. You can't really say I'm up to really that much no good with 5 shots of an old 100-year-old caliber, such as, well, 9mm, that about that old, but with a 38 special, just as a protection. I kind of glazed over it. Some of the rest stops were a little sketchy. Some unsavory characters were coming out of the woodwork when I stopped at one of the rest stops to stretch my legs on the way home. if I were to use this in a self-defense situation, I feel like they'd rake me over the coals. Whereas with this, I'm a little bit more confident, especially between you and I, with the shells staying in the cylinder itself. So I digress there. You may have other philosophies, but overall, I'm happy with this pickup here. I got a great deal on it. Can't mention prices. I recently figured that out, and I think I've been shadow banned. I got the Crimson Trace on there. This is, again, a 2008 model, made in Springfield, Massachusetts. But it was a pawn shop trade-in. The lady never shot the gun. I remember being there when she traded it in, and later on, it happened to catch my eye again when I was in the market for one of these. So, overall, my philosophy has changed. I feel much, maybe not safer, but I feel more confident with this gun here from a standpoint in a blue state than I do with the Glock. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.